At 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, the world held its breath. The turbulence came like a warning, sudden and sharp, rattling the plane with such force that passengers gasped in unison. Oxygen masks didn't fall. Yet. But the overhead bins trembled, threatening to burst open with each angry lurch. Somewhere in the back, a child cried out. A glass shattered 2 rows ahead. But in seat 1A, Zora Williams remained silent. She was 12, small for her age, black, alone. Her legs didn't quite reach the floor, and her sneakers dangled inches above the carpeted aisle. She sat still, gripping the armrest with one hand, the other clenched tightly around a napkin she hadn't realized she'd been wringing since takeoff. First class smelled like orange rind and leather. Her section was filled with men in starched suits, women in silk scarves, all pretending not to notice the little girl who didn't belong. But they noticed. From the moment she stepped into the cabin, led nervously by a gate agent who whispered, "Seat 1A right up front," the glances began. Cold, measuring, dismissive. Even now, as the plane shook like a toy in the wind, no one offered her comfort. She tried to breathe like James taught her, in through the nose, out through the mouth, but her chest felt tight. James, her stepfather, always said, "In the sky, baby girl, your only gravity is who you are." But that was before. Before the accident. Before her mother's silence. Before the letter that had brought her on this plane, bound for London to meet someone she'd never heard of, a solicitor, a secret. Zora blinked back the tears that had been threatening since Baltimore. She couldn't cry here. Not in front of these people. Not where everything smelled like money and judgment. Then it happened. A sound. Wet. Guttural. The man in 1C, the tall one who hadn't so much as glanced at her since she sat down, jerked forward. His drink spilled, his neck slumped at an odd angle, and his arms dropped like weights. The glass rolled from his hand and shattered, champagne soaking into the carpet. Zora's head snapped toward him. For a split second no one moved. Then slowly the flight attendant approached, her heels awkward against the tilting plane. "Sir, Mr. Harrington." Her voice cracked. "Mr. Harrington, are you all right?" Nothing. She reached out, hesitated, then touched his shoulder. No response. A businessman across the aisle whispered, "Is he having a heart attack?" Another woman clutched her pearls. Still, no one rose. No one acted. Because this was first class, and first class did not do panic. But Zora moved. She unbuckled her seatbelt, fast, and dropped to her knees beside him. The flight attendant stepped back in surprise. "Miss, please." "I know CPR," Zora said, her voice trembling but firm. "I need space. Now." The woman blinked. "You can't. He's not breathing." That shut her up. Zora tilted the man back gently, laying him flat across the seats. Her hands, so small, still calloused from years of climbing rusted fences and opening stubborn doors, locked together and began compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each thrust sent tremors through her arms. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, louder than the engines outside. Around her, people gasped, watched, filmed, but no one helped. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, please." A mask above them swayed slowly, side to side, as if keeping rhythm with death. "Don't do this," she begged. He was pale, lips blue. Then something slipped from his jacket pocket, a folded photo torn at the corner. It landed face up on the armrest beside her elbow. Zora glanced and froze. It was her mother, Eliza, smiling, younger, vibrant, holding a baby in her arms, Zora herself, on the steps of the old row house back in Baltimore. But beside her mother, hand placed gently on her shoulder, stood a man. This man, Richard Harrington. Zora's mouth went dry. She couldn't breathe. Number no, this had to be wrong. She'd never seen him before. Never. Her mother never, unless... His eyes flickered open, a sliver of light in a sea of fading life. He looked at her, really looked, and for a brief moment, recognition passed between them like lightning. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Don't let me die without telling you why." And just like that, his eyes rolled back. Zora screamed. By the time the plane touched down at Heathrow, chaos had erupted. Paramedics rushed on board before the door fully opened. Passengers were ordered to stay seated, but everyone turned to watch as Zora, now covered in sweat and someone else's blood, was escorted down the jet bridge by 2 airline officials and a nurse. Her hands trembled, her throat burned, and her mind raced. Everything felt like a dream, a very loud, terrifying dream. "Miss Williams?" one of the men asked gently. She looked up. His accent was British, polished. "I'm from Harrington International," he said. "Mr. Harrington's estate instructed us to be on standby. He listed your name." "What?" But the man didn't explain. Instead, he handed her a thick envelope. On the front, Zora Camille Williams. In case of emergency. The handwriting, familiar, tilted, neat. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside a single page, a letter, handwritten. "My darling Zora, if you're reading this, then the man you met is not a stranger. His name is Richard Harrington, and he is your father." Zora froze, no sound. Just that sentence bleeding through her thoughts like ink in water. "He and I, we were once something real. Before the world said we couldn't be. I loved him, Zora. But he left, or was forced to. I never told you because I was trying to protect you from a truth I hadn't fully made peace with. Now I fear time is not on my side. There is a key waiting for you at Barclays Bank in London. It opens a safety deposit box that contains everything, letters, photos, papers, that will tell you what I never had the courage to say aloud. Go. Trust no one. Not even him. Some truths protect, others destroy. But you deserve to know. With all my love, Mama." The words blurred as her tears fell. Later that evening, Zora sat alone in the back seat of a Blacktown car, watching London blur past the window like a rain-soaked painting. Her mother's letter lay open in her lap, already read a dozen times. She didn't know where they were taking her. Only that the driver had said, "To the Harrington Legacy Hotel, miss." All arranged. She wanted to ask questions, wanted someone to tell her this was all a mistake, that she hadn't saved her father's life, that her life wasn't about to change forever. But something in her gut told her it was all real. She reached into her coat pocket. The photo. The same one she'd slipped from Richard Harrington's jacket before the medics took him away. He hadn't even known she kept it. Her mother's smile, the baby in her arms, and Richard standing in the background, eyes on Eliza. How many lies had been told to keep that photo buried? Zora wasn't sure what she felt. Anger, grief, hope, maybe all three. What she did know was this. Tomorrow she would walk into Barclays Bank with that key, and whatever was in that safety box, it would either shatter her world completely, or finally make it whole. The sky over London was iron gray, the kind of color that made even the city's golden domes and glass towers feel subdued. It wasn't raining, not yet, but the clouds hung so low they seemed ready to press against the roofs. Zora Williams stood under the stone archway of Barclays Bank, Kensington branch, holding a brass key in one hand and her mother's letter in the other. She had barely slept. Her suite at the Harrington Legacy Hotel was too quiet, too polished, too unfamiliar. The staff had greeted her with hushed voices and subtle bows, as though she were royalty returning from exile. Zora didn't know whether to feel honored or afraid. She had eaten breakfast, barely. A single croissant. And even that had turned to dust in her mouth the moment she found another envelope on the nightstand. To Zora, from the legal estate of Eliza Harrington. No explanation, just a line of instructions. Present the enclosed key and this document to Mr. Alton Graves at Barclays, Kensington. He will know what to do. Now here she was, in a wool coat too big for her shoulders, fingers wrapped around a brass key that weighed more than it should. Not in metal, but in meaning. The bank doors opened with a slow whoosh. Zora stepped inside. The inside was nothing like the banks back home in Baltimore. No fluorescent lights, no crowds, no security guards yawning behind fingerprint-smudged glass. This was marble, chandeliers, soft music, and voices so quiet they seemed to be apologizing for existing. A woman at the welcome desk smiled at her, a smile too polite to be real. "Good morning, miss. Do you have an appointment?" Zora swallowed. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. I was told to meet Mr. Alton Graves." The receptionist's eyes flicked briefly to Zora's shoes, mud-stained sneakers, London rain still drying on the sides, then back to her face. "One moment." She picked up the phone, whispered something, nodded twice, and hung up. "Mr. Graves will meet you shortly," she said. "Please take a seat." Zora didn't sit. Instead, she stood by the tall window, watching the street. Red buses roared by. A couple in suits shared an umbrella. And far off, the spire of a church reached into the sky like a question no one wanted answered. Then a voice behind her. "Miss Williams." She turned. The man was older, maybe 60, with snow-white hair combed neatly back and a posture that made Zora think of military funerals and final testaments. He wore a charcoal suit and dark green tie. His gaze was steady, kind, but unreadable. "I'm Alton Graves," he said. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Zora tilted her head. "You know who I am?" "I've known of you since the day you were born," he replied softly. "Your mother arranged this years ago. She made very specific instructions. If you're ready, we can begin." Zora followed him through a private corridor away from the marble, into a hallway lit by brass sconces and history. They stopped before a thick door. Steel. Reinforced. No handle. Just a scanner. Mr. Graves inserted his card, then turned to Zora. "The key, please." Zora hesitated, then held it out. He took it like a priest handling a relic, inserted it into the second lock, and the door clicked open. Inside, a small room. One chair, one table, one safety deposit box. Mr. Graves gestured. "I'll give you privacy. When you're finished, press the bell." Then he left. Zora sat. The box was old, polished, numbered 873-B. She lifted the lid slowly. Inside were 4 things. A bundle of letters, tied with burgundy ribbon. A faded passport, name Eliza Harrington. A cassette tape labeled, "For Zora." "Do not play until you're alone." And finally, a manila folder marked "Confidential, Private Estate, R.H." Zora reached for the letters first. Her fingers grazed the ribbon, and she caught the faintest scent of lavender. Her mother's perfume. She untied them gently. The first letter was addressed to my daughter, the girl I dreamed of long before I held you. Zora read. "Zora, if you're holding this, I'm already gone, and I'm so sorry for that. I wanted to be the one to tell you everything, but time betrayed me. You have every right to be angry, to feel lost. But you must know, nothing about your life was a mistake. Your father, Richard, was the only man I ever loved. We met in D.C. during a fundraiser. I was a journalist chasing truth. He was already drowning in legacy. We fell in love too quickly, too deeply. But we were from two different worlds, and the world wasn't ready to let them meet. His family threatened everything. He disappeared. They called it containment. I called it betrayal. A year later, I gave birth to you, alone. Zora's hand shook. She turned the page. James, your stepfather, was the kindest man I ever met after that. He loved you like his own. But I never stopped loving Richard. I promised myself I'd never let you be used as a pawn in anyone's war. That's why I changed my name back. That's why I hid you. But now you have to know who you are. Because Richard tried to find you. He never stopped. He made mistakes, Zora. But not all of them were his own. In that folder are legal documents, blood records, and yes, inheritance rights. But more than that is your truth. Don't let anyone rewrite it for you. I believe in you. Mama. Zora couldn't move for several minutes. She sat there, breath shallow, letter trembling in her lap. Then she reached for the folder. Inside, medical files, DNA confirmation, a birth certificate she had never seen. It listed father, Richard E. Harrington. She flipped further. At the bottom, a signed will. Recent. Very recent. In the event of my death or incapacitation, I hereby designate Zora Camille Williams as my sole biological heir. Below that, Richard's signature, stamped, witnessed, 3 months ago. Zora's mind reeled. The man she had saved with her bare hands, the man who had watched her board that flight without saying a word, knew. He knew she was his daughter. And he had prepared for the day he couldn't say it aloud. Her fingers found the cassette tape last. There were no cassette players in sight, but she knew what she had to do. She rang the bell. Mr. Graves returned. I'm ready, she said, but I have a question. Of course. Is he alive? Graves paused. His face for the first time showed something like pain. Yes, barely. He's in a coma at St. James Hospital, but he's holding on. Zora swallowed. Can I see him? Mr. Graves nodded. He left instructions for that too, when you were ready. That night, back at the hotel, Zora sat by the window, the cassette tape now resting in her palm. She had borrowed an old Walkman from the hotel concierge, who had found one in a storage room from the 90s. Her fingers hovered over the play button. So many truths, so many lies, so many people who had decided her story for her. But now for the first time the voice she longed for would speak again. Zora closed her eyes and pressed play. The cassette clicked softly into place. Zora sat cross-legged on the window seat of the hotel suite, the Walkman heavy in her lap. Rain tapped lightly against the glass behind her, each drop like a second passing that could never be taken back. The room was quiet, dim, lit only by the low yellow glow of a floor lamp and the pulse of London's nighttime heartbeat below. She took a breath, pressed play. There was a crackle, a long silence, then her mother's voice. Zora, if you're hearing this, it means I'm no longer there to shield you from what I ran from. Zora's body froze. Eliza's voice was deeper than she remembered, worn, but beautiful. Each word soaked in sorrow and memory. I don't know how old you are now, 10, 11, or maybe older. But I've always known this day would come, the day you found the key, the letters, the name you were never allowed to speak. Harrington. I never said it to you because I was scared of what it would mean for you. For your soul, that name, his name, isn't just wealth and legacy. It's blood and silence. It's everything I once loved and everything that nearly destroyed me. Zora's throat tightened. Richard, your father, didn't leave me because he wanted to. His parents had him followed, threatened, isolated. They erased me from his life. I didn't even know I was pregnant until 3 weeks after he vanished. I wrote. I begged. but nothing ever came back. I thought he chose silence. A pause. Zora closed her eyes. Years later, I found out he'd tried to fight for us. Quietly. But by then I'd already married James, your stepfather. I didn't tell Richard about you. Not until last year. Zora sat upright. Yes. I told him. I found him, Zora. I told him you existed, that you were strong and beautiful and kind, that you were everything he would have loved. And I gave him one condition. If he ever wanted to be part of your life, it had to be on your terms, not his. He agreed. For once in his life, he did the right thing. He left it in your hands. That's why you're listening to this now. Another crackle. This one longer, softer. Sweetheart, you come from both of us. That means you will feel everything too much. You will see the world for what it really is. But you must never, ever let that world define who you become. Even if he wakes up, and even if he tells you 100 stories, I want you to promise me something. You'll keep asking your own questions. You'll never let someone else decide your worth. And you'll remember this one truth above all. I chose you. I raised you. You are mine, no matter whose blood runs in your veins. A sudden breath in the recording, a shuddered inhale. I love you, Zora. Don't ever be afraid of the truth. Let it hurt. Let it burn. Then turn it into fire. Click. Then silence. Zora didn't cry. She just sat there, the tape spinning in rewind, watching her reflection in the window. The face of a girl who'd grown up too fast in 24 hours. The daughter of a journalist and a billionaire. The child of secrets. And the sole keeper of her mother's final request. The next morning the clouds parted slightly, as if the city itself sensed a shift. A sleek black car waited outside the Harrington Legacy. Mr. Graves had arranged everything. The driver said nothing, only nodded as Zora stepped in, her eyes fixed straight ahead. They drove past rows of old brick buildings, iron fences, and parks blooming with early summer roses. London, in its strange way, felt too alive for the grief she carried. St. James Hospital sat at the edge of a quiet district, a modern structure of glass and stone that didn't seem like a place for death to linger. But inside the lighting was soft, the silence was respectful, and the receptionist already knew her name. This way, Miss Williams. Room 614. The hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and lilies. Zora walked slowly, each footstep echoing with invisible weight. Then she saw the door. Room 614. She hesitated. A nurse came out. Middle-aged. African-British. Soft face. Kind eyes. You must be Zora. Zora nodded. He's stable, the nurse said gently. Hasn't woken up, but he reacts to certain voices. Heart rate changes, especially female voices. Zora swallowed. Can I go in? The nurse opened the door without a word. The room was warm, filled with soft light from the window and a single beeping monitor beside the bed. Richard Harrington lay still beneath crisp white sheets, an oxygen tube beneath his nose, IV lines running into both arms. His face, so stern and impenetrable on the plane, looked older now, fragile, human. Zora stood by the foot of the bed. For a moment she said nothing, then slowly she walked closer. She pulled the chair next to him, sat and studied him in silence. His hair was flecked with gray, his skin paler than before. She could see the edges of an old scar beneath his chin, and his hand, bigger than hers, rested open, limp, beside the monitor. She reached out, not to hold it, but just to place her fingers near it. Hi, she whispered. No response. My name is Zora Williams. You probably know that. Or maybe you don't. You didn't say anything on the plane. You didn't even look surprised when I sat near you. She paused. I know who you are, or who the world says you are. Her voice trembled, and I heard the tape. I know you tried. that you fought, that your family tore things apart. But you still vanished. You still let her raise me alone." She bit her lip, hard. "You missed my birthdays, my school concerts, the time I broke my wrist falling off the jungle gym. You weren't there when she got sick. When James died." Zora stepped in. Her reflection stared back from every polished panel. She didn't recognize the girl staring back. Not completely. "You don't have to speak," Graves said softly. "Just listen. Observe. Presence is power." Zora didn't answer. She was already listening, to the beat of her pulse, to the hum of the elevator rising through layers of power, and to the ghost of her mother's voice in her mind. "Ask your own questions. Don't let them decide your worth." The elevator stopped at level 51. Executive Council Room. The doors opened to a carpeted hallway where history was framed in gold. Photographs of Harrington leaders through the decades, men in tuxedos shaking hands with prime ministers, building hospitals, launching satellites. At the end of the hall stood a set of grand walnut double doors. 2 guards, men in suits with discreet earpieces, nodded at Mr. Graves and opened them. Zora stepped inside. It wasn't a boardroom. It was a throne room. A long U-shaped mahogany table dominated the space, surrounded by 20 leather chairs. At the head, beneath a skylight dome, sat the legacy chair, reserved for the current family patriarch. Today it was empty. All eyes turned to Zora. She felt their skepticism before a single word was spoken. Seated around the table were the inner sanctum of the Harrington dynasty. White men and women in their 50s and 60s dressed in crisp suits, diamonds glinting at their throats and sleeves. Their expressions ranged from mild curiosity to open disdain. In the center sat Catherine Harrington, the only one who met Zora's eyes directly. She did not smile. Mr. Graves cleared his throat. "Esteemed members of the Legacy Council," he began, "per the last will and testament of Richard E. Harrington, I present to you his biological daughter and sole legal heir, Zora Camille Williams." Silence. Then a man in a gray 3-piece suit chuckled. His nameplate read, "Spencer Ames, COO." "You must be joking," he said. "This child? His heir? We're talking about the governance of a multinational holding, not a scholarship case." Zora's fingers tightened at her sides. Graves remained calm. "Mr. Ames, the documentation has been verified, notarized, and submitted to the Ministry of Estate Affairs. The matter is not theoretical. It is legal." A woman in a red blazer leaned forward. Vivian Cross, Legal Affairs. Her eyes were ice. "Even if what you claim is true," she said, "inheritance does not imply governance. Ms. Williams is a minor. And Richard, God rest his soul, is not dead." "Not yet," someone muttered. Zora stepped forward. Her voice was clear. "I'm not here to govern," she said. "I'm here to ask why none of you told him he had a daughter." That stopped them. The room shifted. A few faces turned away. Others squirmed. Catherine's gaze sharpened. Zora continued, "I read the letters, the ones he sent but never mailed. I saw the records. I know the story now, the edited one." She walked slowly toward the center of the room. "My mother, Eliza Harrington, was your silence. You erased her, not because she lied, but because she loved someone you couldn't control." A flush rose on Spencer Ames's neck. Zora pressed on. "You think I'm too young, too poor, too inconvenient. But here's the thing. Truth doesn't need your permission. It only needs to be spoken." Catherine raised a hand. "Enough." Zora stopped. Catherine stood slowly. "She has a right to speak," Catherine said, "whether you agree with her or not." The room bristled. Catherine walked to the center. "She is the last blood of Richard, whether you like it or not. And while she does not claim power, she holds it." Another man, Julian Marr, board chairman, leaned back. "And what would you have us do, Catherine?" "Hand her the keys. Let a child dictate decades of legacy." Zora looked him straight in the eye. "I don't want your legacy," she said. "I want accountability." That landed like a slap. Then the doors opened. Everyone turned. A man in a wheelchair entered the room, pushed by a nurse. His eyes were half shut. A scar above his brow. The same salt and pepper hair. A monitor beeped quietly at his side. It was Richard Harrington. Alive. Awake. Zora's heart stopped. "Papa!" someone gasped. But Richard's eyes didn't scan the room. They found one person only. Zora. He tried to speak, but his voice was weak. Catherine rushed to his side, adjusting the oxygen line. "You shouldn't be here, Richard." His hand lifted, trembling. "I had to see her." Zora walked forward, knees shaking. She knelt beside the chair. Richard's hand brushed hers. "You saved me," he whispered, "even when I didn't deserve it." She couldn't reply. Not yet. The room had gone still. He turned toward the table. "This is my daughter," he said, louder this time. "This is my legacy." The emergency meeting adjourned in chaos. Media had already caught wind of the internal disturbance. Paparazzi buzzed outside the building. Catherine arranged for Zora to exit through the back. Not mine. Zora clenched her hands. "She died 6 months later," she said flatly. Richard nodded. "I know. I wasn't allowed at the funeral, but I sent lilies, white and blue." Zora closed her eyes. They had arrived anonymously. She had never known who they were from. The room fell into a long silence. Richard's breathing grew steadier, but slower. The light overhead buzzed faintly. Then he spoke again. "There's something else you need to know." Zora looked at him. "It's not just about inheritance, or my family's name. There are documents, transactions, ties between the Harrington Foundation and a set of shell charities that began around the time Eliza disappeared." He met her gaze. "I think they were paying people to keep you hidden, maybe even to track you." Zora's blood ran cold. "Why?" "Because someone on the board knew, and if they could prove I had a child outside the estate agreement, it would fracture the company. Ruin them." She shook her head. "This is insane. It's not just money, Zora. It's control. The Harrington family has billions tied into private infrastructure, energy patents, even political super PACs. A scandal like this would undo decades of careful construction." Zora stood slowly. "Are you saying they wanted me dead?" "No," Richard said. "Just gone." She turned to the window, staring at the city skyline in the distance. Then she spoke. "I don't want your money," she said. "I don't want your name. I don't want any of it." Richard nodded. "I understand." "But I'm not going to disappear again," she said. His voice grew softer. "Good." She turned back to him. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I wouldn't ask you to. But I want to know you meant it. That you really fought." Richard reached for something on the table beside his bed. A photograph. It was the same one Zora had found on the plane, creased at the corners, slightly faded. Her mother and father standing under a tree, young and free. But on the back, a line in Eliza's handwriting. "Find her, or she'll never find herself." Zora took the photo slowly. And for the first time the silence between them didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. An hour later, Zora exited the hospital, the photograph still in her hand. Outside, a soft drizzle began to fall. A black car idled at the curb. But it wasn't Graves's. It was a different driver. A man in a dark overcoat stepped out from the passenger side. He didn't smile. "Miss Williams," he said, My name is Graham Thorne. I represent a group of trustees with vested interest in the Harrington estate. Zora said nothing. We'd like to speak with you, in private, about certain documents your father may have given you. Zora narrowed her eyes. I'm not interested. He stepped closer. I believe you will be, when you find out what's at stake. She took a step back. The driver opened the car door. Zora didn't move, but the man's last words chilled her to her core. Miss Williams, your mother may be gone, but you're not the only one she left behind. The door closed. The car drove away, and Zora was left standing in the rain, photo in hand, name on her shoulders, and a past that had just become more dangerous than she ever imagined. The hotel suite felt colder than usual when Zora returned. Not because the temperature had dropped, but because something inside her had shifted, been re-anchored by that final sentence from the man in the rain. You're not the only one she left behind. She dropped the photo of her parents on the desk, next to the USB drive she had used earlier. Its silver edge gleamed faintly under the table lamp. She hesitated for only a moment, then inserted it again. A folder blinked open. For her eyes only. Inside it, alongside the previous recording, was a hidden subfolder. She hadn't noticed it earlier. It was password protected. Zora stared at the blinking prompt for several seconds, then typed, Camillus. Access granted. The screen blinked once, and then a single file appeared. VID 0513 recovery.mp4. She clicked it. The video was grainy, taken from an old handheld camcorder. Her mother, Eliza, sat on the worn porch steps of their Baltimore apartment, dressed in a loose flannel shirt, eyes tired but alert. She looked different, older, and yet more grounded. She began to speak softly, as if afraid someone might be listening. If you're seeing this, Zora, it means I didn't make it to tell you the rest. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I left pieces of your story out of reach for so long, but I had to choose what to protect and what to bury. She looked away from the camera for a moment, then back. You were always meant to know the truth, but the truth wasn't just about you and Richard. It was about what came before, what came after. She exhaled slowly. His name is Silas. Zora froze. He's your half-brother, my son. I never got to raise him. I never got to name him on a certificate or tell the world he was mine, because after Richard and I were separated, they took me in again. But not for help, for silence. Zora's heart was pounding. They moved me to a private women's home. Said they'd fund my recovery, keep me safe, but I wasn't sick, I was hidden. When Silas was born, they took him. I tried to run. Once, they caught me. Threatened to end everything. Eliza's voice cracked. Zora, I don't know where he is now. They erased his name from records. Told me he died. But I don't believe them. Not for a second. I saw his eyes. She looked directly into the camera. They were yours. The screen faded to black. Zora didn't move for a long time. She sat in silence, the glow of the screen painting her face in soft blue light. The rain outside returned, tapping against the tall windows like a reminder she wasn't alone in the room. Silas, another piece of her mother, a brother she never knew, stolen, hidden, forgotten, but not by Eliza, and now, not by her. She moved quickly. Within the hour, she had booked a flight back to the U.S., quietly, on her own funds, not under the Harrington name. She didn't alert Richard, or Graves, or Catherine, not even Nurse Yasmin. Only one person she left a message for. Gone for answers. Don't follow. Baltimore, Maryland. 2 days later, the sky was overcast when Zora stepped out of the taxi in front of the old building on Orchard Street. The porch steps were cracked now. The flannel curtain in the front window had been replaced by a metal grate. but the mailbox still had the name Williams scratched into the side. She stared at it for a long time before moving toward the door. No one lived there now. The landlord had died. The property had been condemned but never torn down. She still had the keys Eliza kept in a ceramic flower pot buried under years of ivy beside the porch. Inside, the air smelled like thyme and dust. She didn't turn on any lights. Instead, she walked slowly through the rooms, pausing in the kitchen where Eliza used to hum old Billie Holiday songs, touching the wall where her height was marked in pen every year, ending in 2020. She was 5 feet 2 inches then. She found her old bedroom just as she left it, faded posters, a cracked nightlight, a math trophy she'd once cried over when she came in second, and on the desk, an envelope. She didn't remember leaving it there. It had her name on it, Zora C. Williams. But in handwriting that wasn't hers. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Camille, if I don't get to tell you this in person, please know I never stopped looking for him. I had to let go of hope, but I never let go of love. His name was never recorded, but I called him Silas, like the silent trees that know how to survive winters. If you ever find this letter, follow the trail I left at Orchard Shelter. It was the last place I saw the woman who helped me escape the facility that stole him. She wore red gloves and called herself Sister Lark. She said one day someone would come looking, not for riches, but for roots. You are that someone. Zora folded the letter carefully, heart hammering. She had a location, a new name, a shadow trail. She stepped out of the house, locking the door behind her. Outside, the wind had picked up. Not a storm, just change. Later that night, Zora arrived at the gates of Orchard Shelter, a long-abandoned maternity home once run by a Christian Reform Trust, now defunct. The front gate was rusted open. Vines crawled across the broken facade. A plaque near the door read, "Founded 1963, for healing, renewal, and moral restoration." Zora pushed through the cracked front entrance. Inside was darkness layered in decay, mildewed walls, broken floorboards, shattered mirrors. But there, on a distant wall, still visible beneath years of grime, was a painted mural, a single red lark, wings open, eyes sharp, and beneath it, scratched into the paint, barely legible, were words. Silas, March 11th, 2010, transferred. Lark. Zora reached out to trace the date. March 11th, 2010. He would be 15 now, alive, somewhere. And if Sister Lark had transferred him, where? Zora backed away from the wall slowly when she heard something behind her. A creak, software deliberate. She turned sharply. No one. Only a flicker of motion in the broken stairwell above. Then a whisper. Camille. She froze. That wasn't a memory. That was real. The air inside Orchard Shelter hung thick with dust and time, but Zora knew she hadn't imagined it. That whisper. That name. Camille. It wasn't just her mother's voice echoing from old recordings now. Someone else knew. Someone who had waited, through silence, through seasons, for this moment to arrive. She moved quickly, flashlight trembling in her grip. The mural of the red lark still glared at her from the wall, its wings spread like a warning. Zora called out, "Who's there?" No answer. She climbed the broken stairwell cautiously. Every creak underfoot felt like it could betray her position or cave in entirely. At the top, a long corridor stretched ahead. Abandoned rooms lined each side like forgotten chapters of a book no one wanted to reread. And then she saw it, a small candle, still flickering in the dark. Beside it, a piece of folded paper. She approached slowly. The handwriting was uneven but familiar, gritty, confident, almost defiant. Camille, you're not late. I only waited 15 years. SL. Her knees buckled. Silas. He was alive, and not just alive, waiting. The next morning, Zora sat in a quiet corner of the downtown Baltimore Public Library, scrolling through archived nonprofit directories. The red lark symbol from the mural had to mean something. Then she found it. Larkhaven Transfer Trust, founded 2008, Charlotte, North Carolina. Under the Parent Sponsors section, Harrington Heritage Group, silent benefactor. Of course, she pulled out the USB and cross-referenced a financial trail. Catherine had warned her once, quietly, almost dismissively. Not all family money goes to operas and oil. Some of it went to hide the very children they'd disowned. She booked a one-way train ticket to Charlotte that evening. Charlotte, North Carolina. 36 hours later. Larkhaven wasn't a shelter anymore. It was now a private, gated foster center run by an education enrichment trust. Rebranded, reshaped, sanitized. But Zora didn't go to the front desk. She had another lead, an ex-nurse named Linda Greaves, now retired, who had worked there from 2009 to 2012. Zora found her address from a nursing board registry and knocked on her door just before sunset. Linda answered in a faded cardigan and house slippers, eyes sharp despite her age. "I don't do interviews," she said, "especially not about Lark." "I'm not a reporter," Zora replied, holding up the old photo of Eliza. "I'm her daughter." The old woman froze, stepped back, stared again. "My God!" Inside, over lukewarm tea, Linda sat across from Zora on a wicker sofa that creaked like old memories. "I remember your mother," she said. "Eliza. They spoke about her like a ghost. Some staff thought she was dangerous. Others thought she was a myth." "She was real," Zora said quietly. "So was her son." Silas Linda nodded. "He was special. Quiet, but not in a sad way, more like aware. Like he knew he wasn't supposed to be where he was." Zora swallowed. "What happened to him?" Linda sighed. "They changed his name, reassigned his identity. The paperwork was rushed, and I never saw the boy again after the transfer. But I remember the file name they used. Project Wren." "Like the bird." Zora felt a chill. "They moved him?" "To New York," Linda said. "Upstate. Some kind of private home with ties to research programs. Said it was for developmental tracking. But no one ever asked where the funding came from." Zora's breath caught in her throat. "Do you remember the new name?" Linda hesitated, then nodded. "Noah Caldwell." Back at her hotel that night, Zora sat staring at the name over and over. Noah Caldwell, her brother, 15 years old. With a life built on lies, she pulled up archived foster care records. Nothing. Private school listings. Nothing. But then, on an obscure educational newsletter, she found it. A photo from an academic science fair dated 2 months prior. The caption read, "Noah C. awarded first place for memory and sensory correlation in early childhood development. Northbridge Academy, Westchester, New York." His face. Sharp jaw. Wide-set eyes. Hair cut close. But the eyes, those were hers. He looked like Eliza. Zora leaned back in her chair, tears springing to her eyes before she could stop them. He was brilliant, alive, and he had no idea who she was. She packed her things that night. Before sunrise, she boarded a train to New York. She didn't tell anyone. No Graves, no Catherine, not even Richard. Westchester, New York. 2 days later, the gates of Northbridge Academy towered like stone judges. Zora didn't try to enter. She waited across the street behind the fence of a small park, watching as students emerged in navy coats and polished shoes. And then she saw him. Noah, tall for his age, shoulders squared, backpack slung carelessly over one arm. He was laughing, briefly, with a friend before peeling off toward the bus stop. Zora followed at a distance. He boarded a city bus headed toward an address in Mount Kisco. She took the seat 2 rows behind him. He didn't notice her. Not yet. She wasn't ready. But someone else was. As the bus pulled away, she caught her reflection in the window, and behind it, in the glass across the street, stood a man, dressed in gray, holding a phone, watching her. He didn't board the bus. He didn't chase. He just noted and smiled. That evening, at the tiny rental she found near the Hudson, a white envelope waited in the mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a card. On it, 2 words, typed. He knows. Zora stared at it, ice slipping through her spine. She looked toward the window, half expecting the gray-coated man to be there. He wasn't, but someone else was. A boy. Standing at the end of the street. He wore a navy coat, a backpack slung low. Noah. He looked directly at her door, then turned and walked away. Zora didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window with the envelope still clutched in her hand, eyes scanning the empty sidewalk where Noah had once stood. He'd looked straight at her, not through her, not past her, at her. And he had walked away. By sunrise, her heart was a tangle of confusion and panic, tied tighter by one unbearable thought. He knew who I was. And still, he left. She was already packed when the phone rang. Private number. Zora hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end was hushed, trembling. Zora. It's me. Catherine. Zora froze. How did you... There's no time. They've been watching you since you left London. I tried to delay them, to shield you. Who's they? But Catherine's voice dropped to a near whisper. You need to stop looking for him. Zora's spine stiffened. No. I'm telling you, this goes beyond our family. Beyond Richard. You're walking into something you can't control. Zora's voice was calm, quiet, like a knife wrapped in velvet. Then help me. A pause. Then, check your mother's recordings again. All of them. There's something I wasn't allowed to tell you. The line went dead. Zora opened her laptop, pulled out the USB, and scanned the folders one more time. There it was. A locked file, hidden beneath layers of meaningless code. Eliza Final V9.move. The system asked for a passkey. Zora stared at the screen for a full minute, then typed NOAH access granted. The screen went black for several seconds, then flickered. Eliza sat in a dimly lit room, her voice softer than before, but more resolute. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner. If you're watching this, Zora, then they found you, or worse, they found him. You need to understand, they didn't just take Silas because of me. They took him because of them. She looked away for a second, then back. Project Wren wasn't a charity, it was an experiment, funded quietly through shell foundations, one of them with your father's name on it. But don't hate him yet. He was told it was to protect at-risk children with rare genetic markers. Zora's hands trembled. Silas wasn't just brilliant. He was engineered, through me. Through a clinical trial I never consented to. They wanted to see what happened when art, memory, and trauma intersected in a child. And now, if they've kept him this long, it means he's reached the age they were waiting for. They're not done with him, not until they break him. Eliza's final words were a plea. Zora, find him first, before they take what's left. Zora stood in silence for a long time, then opened her email. A new message had appeared. No sender, no subject, only a single line of text. 021-0S-0E1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1. She passed rows of locked doors, each labeled with codes instead of names. Then she heard it. Voices. She pressed herself flat against the wall. Baseline cognition stable. Memory retention exceeded 96%. Any signs of emotional deviation? Not since the trigger test. Subject remains highly suggestible in visual recall simulations. Then, we'll increase pressure tomorrow. Emotional exposure to sibling memory is scheduled. Zora's heart stopped. They were using her. She crept closer. Through a small window, she saw a white observation room. Inside, behind a pane of glass, Noah sat in a chair. Eyes closed, wires attached to his temples. A screen in front of him flashed images too quickly for anyone else to track. Zora recognized them. Her childhood drawings, her mother's photo, their apartment in Baltimore. They were probing him with fragments of a life he'd never known. She didn't even realize she was crying. Then someone behind her spoke. "You're not supposed to be here." She turned, fist clenched. A man in a charcoal suit stood behind her. Tall, late 50s, silver-rimmed glasses. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't shout. He only studied her. "I assume you're Camille Williams." Zora didn't answer. "I'm Dr. Mason," he said. "I oversee Wren." She stared at him in disgust. "You're experimenting on him." "No," Mason replied calmly. "We're preserving what your mother gave us. Genius, legacy, precision." Zora's voice shook with rage. "You stole him!" Mason didn't flinch. "Would you rather he'd grown up in a foster system, or on the streets of Baltimore, forgotten? You don't understand what he is. He remembers everything, smells, numbers, dreams. That kind of brain doesn't belong to poverty. It belongs to progress." She stepped forward. "I'm taking him." Mason only smiled. "No, Miss Williams. You're going to leave. Quietly. Because if you stay, you'll trigger something we can't control. He doesn't know you. He knows an idea of you. And if you show him the truth now, without preparation, you'll destroy the very mind you claim to love." He leaned closer. "You want to help him? Wait. We've almost completed phase 4. Zora's fist clenched, but she didn't move. Not yet. Outside the facility, she sat in the car for nearly an hour, then turned on her voice recorder. She began to speak, softly, clearly. Eliza Camille Williams, born April 5, 1999. Daughter of Eliza Ray and James Williams. Half-sister of Noah Caldwell, formerly Silas. Born March 11, 2010. Subject of illegal experimentation under Project Wren. Coordinated by Mason Biostrategies with silent funding from the Harrington Heritage Trust. She exhaled. "This is my testimony. If anything happens to me, this file must go to the press, to the Senate, to the world. He is not theirs. He is mine." She stopped the recording, saved the file, then sent it to 3 places. Her lawyer in Baltimore, a journalist she once met during the Harrington trials, and Catherine. The subject line was simple. "If I go silent, tell him the truth." At 3:12 a.m., her phone buzzed. A single message from an encrypted number. "Zed, don't wait." He's starting to remember on his own. "See," attached. A grainy photo of Noah from earlier that day. He was standing outside a classroom, holding a single crayon drawing. It was of a red lark, wings wide, watching the sky. There are moments when the body moves long after the heart has shattered, when the mind drags itself through cold logic, not because it wants to, but because it has no other choice. That's where Zora was now. She had cried everything out in Part 8. She had begged, pleaded, and broken. Now? Now she planned. The drawing of the red lark haunted her. It wasn't the crayon lines or the childlike precision that shook her. It was what wasn't there. Eliza always drew it with a second wing curled inward, as if sheltering something. But Noah's version had both wings wide open, stretched defiantly toward the margins of the paper. It was the sign she'd been waiting for. He remembered something deeply. And Zora knew. If she didn't act now, Mason would bury that spark again, permanently. By the next morning, she had erased her digital footprint. New phone, new alias. She used a burner email to contact two people. Linda Greaves, the former nurse from Lark Haven. Amir Tate, a journalist from the Baltimore Journal-Tribune who had once written a controversial piece exposing corruption in Harrington Foundation's land acquisitions. She sent each the same message. Subject S, still detained. Unlawful experimentation under biogenetic trials continues. Extraction needed. Evidence ready. You in? Only Amir responded, 5 hours later. I never stopped watching you. What do you need? Zora exhaled. Hope was a fragile thing, but right now it was enough. Inside Facility B. That same night, Dr. Mason stood behind the one-way glass as Noah sat motionless in the testing room. Another set of image stimuli flashed on the screen. This time a blurred photograph of Eliza holding an infant. Then a soundbite. Her voice, gentle, maternal. You're safe now, baby. I see you. Noah didn't blink, but the monitor buzzed. Heart rate spike, pupil contraction, left hand tremor. He was reacting. Mason turned to his assistant. Begin sequence 11, memory flood protocol. Yes, sir. As the next image loaded, Noah suddenly lifted his hand, not slowly, instinctively, as if swatting something invisible from the air. His lips moved. Mason leaned forward. Z. He stopped. But it was enough. Mason's eyes narrowed. He's breaching. Back in the rented car parked 4 blocks from the facility, Zora drew a detailed map on the back of an old shipping receipt. She labeled every exit point she'd observed, every guard rotation, every delivery time. She had one shot. Tomorrow. During the system's calibration window, between 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., the facility's biometric sensors would temporarily go offline for patch updates. It would be their only blind spot in 72 hours. Zora contacted Amir again. I need you to create a false media alert. Say there's been a security breach at the Harrington corporate offices in Midtown Manhattan. Leak an anonymous tip from an insider. Draw them out. Got it. But Zora, what if it backfires? Then they'll know I'm not bluffing. At the Harrington estate, that afternoon, Catherine sat alone in the family greenhouse, staring into the face of a dying orchid. Her phone buzzed once, a file, Zora's testimony. Attached was a link to a news article. Whistleblower leaks medical evidence of genetic trials in upstate New York. It had gone live. She had told Zora to stop, but the girl had done exactly what Eliza would have done. Catherine looked toward the horizon, past the manicured gardens, past the white fences that pretended everything was still under control, and whispered, You were always braver than me, Eliza. Then she stood, walked to her study, and made a call. 3:57 a.m. Outside Facility B, Zora crouched behind the delivery truck, gloves pulled tight. Every movement measured. Her heart pounded in her throat, but her hands were steady. The gate buzzed. The guards received a call on their radios. Urgent media breach at Midtown HQ. Possible cyber attack. Exactly as planned. They began shifting patrol routes. Zora slipped past the outer fence, slid through the drainage culvert, and crawled into the eastern maintenance wing. 4:02, right on schedule. Inside, the lights flickered briefly as the calibration kicked in. Cameras went offline for 120 seconds. Zora moved fast, down the first hallway, left, into the auxiliary security room. She plugged in a flash drive and deployed a looping feed of previous footage. 2 minutes. In the testing wing, she found the panel that controlled room A17, Noah's observation unit. Locked. Biometric ID required. Zora pulled out the card she had stolen from the lab tech's coat 3 nights earlier. Scanned. Green light. The door slid open. Noah sat in the chair, pale but alert. Electrodes still attached to his temples. He turned toward her. Eyes wide, but not scared. Almost relieved. "Zora?" She froze. "You remember?" Noah's voice cracked. "Your face, your name, the smell of paint." She went lavender. Tears surged to her eyes. "I came for you." He reached out. Then a siren blared. Alert. Security breach detected. Zone A. Zora grabbed Noah's hand. "We need to move." She yanked the cables off him, ignoring the sparks. Together they ran. Down the corridor, through the research wing. A side door sealed itself automatically. Zora cursed, but Noah stepped forward, took a breath, and entered a key sequence into the wall panel. Click. Door unlocked. She stared. He met her eyes. "I've seen them do it 1,000 times." Outside, floodlights flicked on. Security teams moved in. Zora pulled Noah behind the greenhouse wing. The exit was 2 fences away. She turned to him. "Can you climb?" He nodded, but before they could move, a voice echoed behind them. "Don't." Dr. Mason. He stood alone, no guards. Zora positioned herself in front of Noah. Mason raised his hands. "No guns, no force, just a request." "Step aside," she said. "I won't stop you," he said. "But he deserves to know what he's leaving behind." Zora turned to Noah. "You don't owe them anything." Noah looked down, then back at Mason, and said the words no one had prepared him for. "I choose her." Mason blinked and stepped back. They scaled the final fence, slid into the woods beyond, and vanished into the trees. 8:42 a.m. Somewhere north of Albany, Zora and Noah sat in a borrowed jeep, parked beneath the shadow of an old radio tower. For the first time they were alone. Truly alone. Noah stared at the sky. "I used to dream of her." Mom Zora nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "So did I." He turned to her. "What happens now?" She smiled, tired but free. "Now we start over." The world didn't change in a single day, but it did in a single broadcast. At 9:14 a.m. Eastern Time, a video uploaded by investigative journalist Amir Tate went live on 5 platforms and was mirrored across nearly 24 whistleblower accounts. This is the story of Zora Williams, a 12-year-old girl who saved a billionaire. A child labeled poor, forgotten, insignificant, until she uncovered a project that stole lives for science. This is also the story of her brother, a boy they renamed, a genius they tried to erase, a family they never thought would fight back. The video included clips from Zora's testimony, excerpts from Eliza's final encrypted message, footage from inside Facility B, and, most damning of all, Noah's own biometric logs. The way his mind had been monitored, manipulated, measured like a lab specimen. It didn't take long. Within 24 hours, Project Wren was trending across the U.S., then across the Atlantic. And by morning, the subpoenas started flying. Washington, D.C. 3 days later, the hearing room was packed. Journalists, legal teams, families of missing children once enrolled in the Harrington Foundation satellite schools. In the center of it all sat Catherine Harrington. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, no spin. Just a single black dress and the exhaustion of someone who had finally stepped out from behind a legacy and into the glare of truth. Her voice trembled at first, but when she mentioned Eliza's name, something steadied. My sister was silenced. I was told she was unstable. I believed what they fed me, because it was easier than facing what our family had done. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask that we dismantle this, publicly, completely. Project Wren was built on lies, on stolen blood. Let us never again fund progress by stealing futures. When she stepped down from the podium, the silence was louder than any applause. Meanwhile, Dr. Mason was unraveling. He had denied the accusations, claimed it was research, therapy, that the children had been elevated, not harmed, but someone had flipped. Linda Greaves, the former nurse, handed over 37 internal memos, signed authorizations for neuroimmersion tests, and the original approval forms, showing Eliza's forged consent. Mason was arrested 2 nights later at his private home in Westchester, still insisting, "They were my life's work." He was denied bail. The judge's words were brief but unforgettable. "You didn't raise them. You erased them." Baltimore. 2 weeks later, Zora stood in front of her old apartment. The steps were cracked. The door had the same creaky hinge that used to make her jump as a kid. Noah stood beside her. Not Silas, not Subject S, just Noah. He wore a hoodie now, hers, oversized, and a pair of beat-up sneakers that Catherine had insisted on buying for him. "No son of mine's walking around like a code name," she had said softly. Zora unlocked the front door. The air inside smelled of dust and memory. They walked room to room in silence, until she opened the drawer in her mother's old writing desk. There, wrapped in a worn piece of lavender ribbon, was a letter addressed in Eliza's script, "To both of you, when the world finally listens." Zora sat on the edge of the bed. Noah knelt beside her. Together they read, "My sweet Zora, my beautiful Noah, I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I fought in the ways I could, but the system was bigger than I imagined. I never wanted to hide him from you, or you from him. I only wanted to protect you both. Zora, you are fire and compass. You ask questions even when it's dangerous. That will be your gift. It will also be your burden. Noah, you are music and silence. They will try to make you a machine. Don't let them take your wonder. If this letter finds you together, it means the world is cracked open enough to let the light through. Please, don't rebuild the walls. Love loudly. Break what needs breaking. And when they ask how you survived, tell them this: because we remembered who we were." Zora folded the letter with trembling hands. Noah looked at her. "She always knew." Zora nodded. "She always did." 2 months later, New York City. In a sunlit hall overlooking the East River, a plaque was unveiled before a crowd of journalists, educators, and survivors. The Eliza Ray Center for Lost Children. "We are not erased." Zora stood at the podium. Noah sat in the front row, flanked by Catherine and Amir. Zora's voice was calm, full of gravity beyond her years. "I was 12 when they said I didn't belong in first class. I was 12 when I saved a man who didn't even look me in the eye. I was 12 when I found out I had a brother. And I was 12 when I realized this world doesn't hand justice to girls like me. You have to take it, gently, but firmly, like a beating heart." She turned toward the young faces seated before her. Kids from shelters, from halfway homes, from systems that tried to forget them. You are not missing. You are not broken. You are not what they said you were. And the sky? It's yours too. Epilogue 6 months later. In a quiet garden behind the center, a red lark sculpture rose from a stone base. Its wings were uneven, one curved inward, the other reaching. Beneath it, etched in metal, "To those who were taken, to those who came back, and to those still searching, you are seen, you are remembered, you are loved." Zora visited the garden every Tuesday. Sometimes she came alone. Sometimes Noah came too. And once a year, on the date she met Richard Harrington on that plane, she brought a single lavender bloom, laid it at the lark's feet, and whispered, "She saved us first." Lessons from the story. Truth never dies, it only waits to be uncovered. Though buried for more than a decade, the truth about Zora, Noah, and the horrors of Project Wren came to light. It was the quiet determination and courage of a 12-year-old girl that broke the chain of silence. Family isn't defined by blood, but by choice. Zora didn't just discover her long-lost brother. She chose to stand up for him, for her mother, and for the voiceless. Real love isn't about conditions. It's about seeing someone fully and staying. One person can begin change. One child can finish it. Zora started this journey trembling, hurt, unsure, but she became a symbol of justice, dignity, and intelligence. Her transformation proves your age doesn't limit your power, only your silence does. Real-world lessons we can apply. Never underestimate the voice of the young. In many communities, children, especially poor children, children of color, are dismissed. But like Zora, they often carry the truth adults have forgotten. We must learn to listen, not lecture. Systems can be flawed, but people within them can choose what's right. From Catherine Harrington to Linda Greaves, everyone had once stayed silent. But when they chose to act, they helped save a generation. In real life, you don't need to be perfect to do good. You just need to begin. Identity is not what others name you. It's what you claim for yourself. Zora was dismissed as a poor black girl from Baltimore, but she proved that you don't need money or status to be worthy. Confidence begins when you know your value, even if no one else sees it yet. Justice doesn't always start in a courtroom. It starts with belief. Zora's persistence, her evidence, her truth, not a legal system, sparked reform. True change often begins quietly, with small acts of resistance that grow louder and stronger over time.